Welcome home, brave heroes. And yes, home is a dank, dark dungeon in the world of HeroQuest. On a day where I, Ash, today, will unbox Reaper Bones miniatures. Yes, you heard that right because you probably read the title, and yes, you read that right because I assume that you can read. This is a great intro. I did a little bit of a search, on the Reaper Minis website, trying to figure out where in a 100-mile radius I could purchase Reaper Bones, and lo and behold, there was one result. I'm really out here, guys. I'm really out in the middle of nowhere. So I took advantage of the opportunity and I purchased 6 things, and I would have probably purchased a lot more if they'd had more of a selection, but to be quite honest with you, their selection was pretty embarrassing. So, Reaper unboxing stream. This isn't a stream, this is a video. In no particular order. First up, we've got the Elven blacksmith, $2.99 USD, and this is why I love Reaper Bones. Dark Heaven Bones, Chronoscope, doesn't matter, although all of the ones today are going to be Dark Heaven Bones for some reason or another. Dark Heaven Bones are just my favorite. They're always so economically priced. The details are just great. The material is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a little bit bendy. It's not going to break at any point. They're very kit bashable. They're very easy to paint. They come in a great scale. The advertised scale of bones is 25 millimeter, but I do find that they work really well paired with classic 28 millimeter HeroQuest. And I mean, what are we doing here if not finding stuff to proxy and use for our HeroQuest? I was really glad to find these, don't get me wrong, but it looks like for future Bones orders, I'm just going to have to go onto the website and sacrifice the shipping money to get that which I want, that which I desire, which is more bones. Having a female blacksmith in addition to my male blacksmith, that'll be quite interesting. Perhaps each blacksmith can offer a different variety of services. Now, do you remember way back when I told you that these were 25 millimeter? There might be some different millimeter specifications or scale specs depending on which line of bones you're purchasing, because your 32 millimeter contemporary HeroQuest miniatures do not look out of place or out of scale with these Dark Heaven Bones. These are both elves, case in point. Bones on the right, obviously, HeroQuest on the left, obviously. All that's left to do is to purchase a pack of these bases and rebase the bones, if you're inclined to do that. By contrast, they do look quite out of place with the classic HeroQuest, and this isn't an official classic HeroQuest miniature. This is a Minis 3D mini that I happened to get as part of a different thing. So a little weird on the scaling, but there are also some other Reaper Bones miniatures that are definitely a little bit smaller and would not look like they fit in the same universe as your 32 millimeter contemporary HeroQuest is. Anyway, we've got the blacksmith girl, and I just wanted to bring up that in Dark Souls, the first Dark Souls, you have several blacksmiths. There are at least 3 scattered all over the world. In Demon Souls, you've got 2. They've got different capabilities. You can bring them your weapons and they'll level your weapons up, obviously, but you can bring certain kinds of coal to the different blacksmiths. Some blacksmiths will accept whatever coal you give them until you try to give them like a specialty coal, like the giant's coal. Then that blacksmith will be like, wow, I can't actually do anything with that. You're gonna have to take that to a giant blacksmith. So you give the giant coal to the giant blacksmith when you finally encounter him much later. The point of all of this is infusions, weapon infusions. Different blacksmiths can utilize the different coals that they have to infuse different weapons that you bring them with different properties. So if I want to infuse my weapon with dark magic or a bleed infusion, I would take the appropriate coal, and some coals have several different kinds of infusions that they inherently provide when you give them to a blacksmith. And now when I take my club or my claws to the blacksmith, they can upgrade them as normal, sure, but they can also infuse them with the properties given by the special coal, if I so desire. So that's taking the long road to explain that you could use this blacksmith sculpt to represent a character that is recurring in your HeroQuest adventures. Perhaps you find her tucked away in a safe part of the dungeon. The blacksmiths in Dark Souls are usually in pretty precarious places, but it's very clear that they can take care of themselves. I mean, they're pretty big dudes. And if you have the special Elven coal, then she'll infuse your weapons with the Elven properties, and perhaps Elven properties allow your weapon to do 1 extra combat die of damage against all undead, or allows you to re-roll 1 combat die when you are fighting greenskins and the like. Just an idea, let's move on to the next Reaper. And this is Innkeeper Sophie. I couldn't resist getting Sophie as an innkeeper. We can always take her wings off, although I don't see me de-winging Sophie at any point. Sophie's kind of like the poster child for Reaper. There are a lot of different Sophies. Sophie the Succubus. She is just a darling, and she's very finely detailed, and she's got her mugs of ale here and her plate of delicious food. She looks like she'd be a lot of fun to paint. She looks like she's up for some lively chatter to keep her patrons entertained. And I like the idea very much of a tavern keeper, innkeeper, NPC, because this is somebody that you could rescue if they're in the dungeons of HeroQuest. But if you're using them in more of like a roleplay context, then obviously this is the NPC that you approach to get information or to order food for buffs to your heroes so that the next time they enter a dungeon, they will be well fed and well drank for their next adventure. I'm probably not gonna take off her wings, but I don't know. I think she's more usable without them. I should probably just get a regular tavern keeper, but there wasn't one. There was just Sophie. All right, next up, we've got the Grave Flesh Servants, and there are 2 in this box. I'll reveal the total price that I paid for everything once I get everything unboxed, but I just wanted to show these guys off. This guy, I don't know that I'm going to use him so much. He looks a little bit too much inspired by Universal Frankenstein's monster with the flat top head, coat, chains. He's a bit contemporary for my tastes. His bride, however, sorry, let me just turn her around. His bride, however, does not look too much like the Frankenstein's bride. I don't even think this was the inspiration for this miniature. She's just a beautiful courtesan looking, perhaps noble, perhaps princess, perhaps entertainer, and perhaps, yes, undead queen of the night. And she was worth the price of this blister pack alone. That said, I could probably take a knife and round out this guy's head just a little bit and make him into somebody that's more akin to a noble who's been turned undead. Very important undead in my HeroQuest games. These guys are tall, by the way. This guy's pretty brutish. He's pretty hulking. The creature, as it were. But so is the lady. She's not a slouch, and she's not slouching. What are you looking at, barbarian? I think it's pretty clear that these are either supposed to be constructs, as in flesh golems, or they really are just a different scale, but there's no difference in the line. They're still Dark Heaven bones. So I would say they're just supposed to be very tall characters. All right, next up, we've got the Nagendra warriors. And these guys are, well, they're Naga. There's 2 of them in a pack, and some assembly is required. This is a bit thick. You can also just keep your knife stationary and wiggle the part itself. You know what? That worked out fine, though. This is the torso and the bow. And although we have 2 snake bodies for these 2 miniatures, the holes in the bases are very distinct. You're not going to be able to put one into the other. They fit just one way. Oh, that dry fits so well. This guy looks so cool already. I like the idea of snake men and nagas and such in fantasy, but I really like bipedal. So like the Cobrans from Dark World, MVPs. And the heads dry fit on pretty well too. Yeah, this guy looks really neat. I like him a lot. He does seem like dangerous enemy, monster, forced to be contended with, but it also seems like the kind of character who you could temporarily befriend, like come to peace with, establish a truce while you're going through the dungeon, taking out the zombies and orcs and such that have threatened the Naga's way of life. This plastic is so easy to cut through. All right, this one's pretty cool because with the hand, we have quiver of arrows at their side. So this is actually what that amounts to be. So 1 archer, and 1 melee. And the super glue gel holds immediately, and we have our ranged and melee Naga. Yeah. Okay, next up is Nesra, the dancing girl. There is no assembly required for her. She is just a dancer. Look, I can't resist a cute miniature lady, okay? But also she was turned away, so I didn't really get a good look at her. This is the dancing girl, Nesra. I suppose she is still in scale. She's a petite thing, but she could still exist in the world of other Reapers. I'm more than certain that they take this stuff into consideration as they're designing each one, but it's still something that I'd like to look at, because if you've been watching the channel, I do point out when miniature lines kind of bork this a little bit with proportion. You do have different sculptors working on different things, and it can sometimes be a challenge making sure that the sculptors all stay on track, if that's even something that you're looking for or auditing during the production process. Anyway, a dancing girl, what can we do with her? Well, obviously another NPC who needs saved. Of course, if you were inclined, you could make it to where she emboldens the heroes, or some of the heroes, Gives them a little extra attack or defense buff whenever they're rolling their combat dice. You could even make her into her own full-fledged hero self and have her distract enemies with her dancing. But you needn't stop there. Dancers are an entire class, an entire job in the Final Fantasy series in a lot of games. And they use these moves to produce offensive as well as defensive magics. Not just party buffs, but directly harming your enemies. So there's lots of things that a dancer character could do. They could charm an enemy. They could do dance moves with weapons, such as curved swords or chakram, circlets, ring blades, and gracefully attack the enemy by slicing them into bits. It doesn't have to be anything lustful. You could definitely make it to where it's just a physical version of what the bard does. Capoeira exists. Capoeira? All right, and last but not least, the Vampire Bloodlords. And while this one's got a distinct Dracula-esque feel, I believe that this silhouette is so classic that it need not tie itself down to one particular property. Dracula may be the progenitor of most modern vampire fantasy, but vampires definitely exist in the old world, and it would be my pleasure to paint this guy white, bone white, and have him join the ranks of my other undead. This lady as well, who comes based with her own tombstone. I have other plans for this character though. I would love to use her as a thrall summoning vampiress, and maybe I shall. But I'm actually thinking that I'm going to paint her up to be the vampire Genevieve of Jack Yeoville's novel series set in the old Warhammer world. That said, she could definitely still be an effective enemy in the HeroQuest board game. Not Genevieve, but this miniature of this vampire lady with her tombstone base. I couldn't bring myself to rebase her. I'd have to put all of this onto another 1-inch circular base. One of the highlights of this haul, definitely. She's awesome. Really, really cool. Love her hair. She's gonna be a lot of fun to paint. So that's it. These minis right here were about $32 USD, all things considered. Worth it, in my opinion. It's a lot of potential. It's a lot of inspiration. It's a lot of new stuff to potentially add to my games. It's a lot of stuff to think on, see what makes sense, see what I would rather use for something like Project F. We won't be doing very many of these Reaper mini hauls, that's for sure, but the next time I do get an assortment of Reapers, you can bet I'll unbox them here on the channel for you. Let me know what you thought. Are you finding any Reapers in your area? I just used the website to locate the store, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some other stores that might have Reaper bones that just don't show up as like authorized resellers or whatever. I don't know how all that works. I will see you in the next exciting adventure, Brave Heroes. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and bye for now.